Welcome to the QMS podcast, where we explore the issues, opportunities and trends shaping Scotland's red meat industry.
In the QMS Focus episodes, we'll be speaking to the Chief Executive, Chair, board members and market specialists about the topics that matter most to the sector, from market trends and policy developments to practical insights and supply chain challenges.
This podcast is your opportunity to put your questions directly to QMS and to industry experts. If there's something you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can submit your questions through our social media channels or anonymously using the link in the episode description. So I'm joined today by a friend and important industry figure in Kate Rowell. How are you, Kate?
I'm fine, thank you, Robert. Not so bad.
Good. I was just trying to think how long ago it is that I first met you on Rural Leadership. When would that be?
2015 it was, October the 31st, 2015. There you go, I can remember it.
Yeah, in the Fenwick Hotel.
It was.
Yeah. No, I was lucky enough to facilitate. It was my first year facilitating as well, so we were both under pressure, but certainly a lot has changed since then. So at that stage, I think you were just at home, just finished being a monitor farmer. Would that be right?
Yeah, we were monitor farmers 2012 to 2015. So yeah, we were just about to finish. I think it was November 2015 we finished. And I had joined the QMS board April of that year. So 2015 was a big year.
Yeah.
And you was the highlight.
Yeah, of course it was. And then when did you become chairman? When did that happen?
Chair.
Sorry, of course, yes, chair.
I always say to people, Jim McLaren would not have been very pleased if somebody had referred to him as a chairwoman. So you don't refer to me as a chairwoman.
I think that's quite reasonable. Maybe from now on we should call him the former chairwoman.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I became chair in October 2018. So I was on the board for 3 and a bit years and then became chair in 2018.
Excellent. And you're now the longest standing chair, is that correct?
I am, yeah. So Jim, the way it works, it's public appointments. So you have a limited term. So you have the maximum of 2 4-year terms. But they've extended mine by just a few months just because of the election that was in May and the disruption that caused to the sort of appointment process for the next chair. So I've got a few extra months. So I will outdo Jim by the time I get to the end of it.
Excellent. Yeah. So what, obviously QMS, the industry, everything's changed since 2018 to now. I suppose, what are you most kind of proud of that you've done, and what are we pushing forward for just now with QMS?
So I've just been reflecting on this actually, because I think this goes out on the first day of the Highland Show, and I will just be giving my speech at the Highland Show breakfast as we do every year, and this will be my last one. So part of what I'm going to do is reflect on how things have changed. So I have been thinking about this quite a lot. And when I first came into the role, the big challenge that was coming up was Brexit. That was the big thing that was going to affect everybody. The sheep trade was going to be decimated if we didn't get the right sort of deal, if you remember back to then. Nobody really knew where we were going. And looking back from this end of the whole process, looking back the way, Brexit, yeah, it happened. But it was very kind of minor when you look at all the other huge things that have happened, like COVID and the war in Ukraine and the war that we're in now, and the rise of veganism and the fall of veganism and the climate change emergency. You know, Brexit is in there, but it's not nearly the big thing that it was going to be when I first started. I remember going to Orkney in, I think it was January 2019, and veganism landed on Orkney the same time as we did in the plane, I'm sure, because there'd been some sort of interview or something on Orkney radio that everybody was absolutely up in arms about this. And we went round quite a few different farms, and it was all anybody could talk about, you know, we're going to have to, everybody's wanting to stop us eating meat. Everything's going to be plant-based. You know, it was a real threat, and you can look back now and think it was a bit funny, but at the time people were really, really concerned about this. And now look at where we are. Nobody's speaking about it. It's a fad that's been and gone. People are really, really interested now in protein. They're interested in where their food comes from. Nobody wants to eat sausages made out of tofu or soy or something. They want real food. So, yeah, really interesting journey for various different things. And of course, the sheep trade, far from collapsing, is about the best. Well, it is the best I've ever seen it in my life. So, yeah, just interesting how you expect things, and sometimes they work out, and sometimes they're completely different from what you expect.
I know there would be some pretty bad decisions in hindsight made about sheep and people that sold breeding sheep at Brexit with a view to do something different or buy them back when the trade collapsed and all sorts. And it really is. It now makes it a challenge. I mean, it's a real positive for all of us that are in, but it's very difficult for those who are not in. That taking on a tenancy, new entrant stories are a real worry for me anyway, is how we actually get new blood in if a mule gimmer is now £300 and if a suckler cow with calvet foot's now £3,000. It's a difficult road in, but it's nice to see certainly the industry has grown and blossomed really.
Yeah, tell me about it. I persuaded my husband to sell. We sold all our sheep quite early. Not our sheep, sorry, our lambs. Usually we would keep some store lambs, and I made him get rid of them all before the actual sort of knife fell on Brexit. And then, of course, in the next sort of few months, they were worth about twice what they had been, so I wasn't very popular. But we didn't sell any of our yows or any of our cattle. But yeah, absolutely. Get how you get into that. I mean, sheep are obviously a bit more accessible for people, but it's still a big capital outlay, and there's just few tenancies and opportunities are few and far between. We were up at I was up at Monitor Farm meeting last week, up at Banffin and there was talk of contract farming up there, and there was actually an opportunity that Strathmore Estates were highlighting that they had going for somebody, and it just sounded really, really good. But it did strike me that you very, very rarely hear of those opportunities coming along.
Yeah, but I suppose we could talk about that one all day. It's certainly a separate series of podcasts in its own right. What about, so obviously as you say, this is going out the morning of day one of the Highland Show, so you've already made your announcement. So what is it that you're going to be announcing at the Highland? What's occurring?
Well, one of our big launches, we're sort of launching half of it at Scotch Sheep and then half at the Highland Show, is to do with the second part of meeting our potential. So if you remember last year, we did a huge amount of work. Ian MacDonald in our market intelligence department did a huge amount of work on looking at what the demand for beef was going to be over the next 5 years or so. And what he came out with, having run the models and all the figures, was that we were either going to have to produce more beef ourselves to meet the demand, or we were going to end up importing more. So that all went along last year, and actually the big win out of that, and it took a lot of work from ourselves and a lot of other organisations, was that Scottish Government said that they were not going to follow the Climate Change Committee's recommendations to reduce livestock numbers, and they did not want to do that. And that was, as I say, the result of a lot of work from our campaign, but also others, across the industry. So that was a real win last year. And then discussion turned to looking at the other two species that we look at, so sheep and pigs. And this year, Ian's been doing some work on the sheep sector to see what the potential is there, what the opportunity is there, if there is going to be a shortage, what we need to look at there. So, and then pigs are coming later on this year as well. So at Scotch Sheep, we launched the first part of that, and we then have combined the sheep figures and the cattle figures to do a big launch at the Highland Show to look at really the economic potential when you combine both, because many farms in Scotland, as you know, are sheep and cattle. A lot of farms are mixed. So although we have to look at the species separately when we look at figures, in reality, people have got cattle and sheep on their farms. So to get across that combined opportunity to decision makers and to general public and consumers is really, really important.
Yeah, and is it a similar story in terms of the extra 2 cows? Is it a similar story in the sheep sector as well?
So sheep ewe numbers fell, I think, quite dramatically a bit earlier than cattle numbers, and over recent years they've been reasonably stable. They've declined a little bit, but not nearly as much as cattle in the past sort of 5 years. And interestingly, the productivity for sheep has gone up. And when you look at Ian's figures, that's really interesting. In England, the numbers are falling much faster, and their productivity's gone down. So, number of lambs per ewe in Scotland has gone up, and number of lambs per ewe in England has come down, which could be for a huge variety of reasons, including weather and all sorts of things. But it's a really good news story that our productivity is up. So we're still producing a good amount of lamb and sheep meat, and we're producing more from less, well, more from the same. So that's a really good news story. To get us back to being in a position where we wouldn't have to import it, where we would be completely self-sufficient at a UK level. We are self-sufficient at the moment, but the model shows that in 5 years' time, so by about 2032, we won't any longer be self-sufficient because consumption and the population have increased, and that's particularly down to sort of the ethnic population in the UK. So there is going to be a gap. It's nowhere near as big a gap as the cattle gap, but there is going to be a gap in 5 years' time unless we hold our sheep numbers stable or increase them slightly and increase our productivity. So there is an opportunity there, absolutely. Numbers-wise, it's nothing like as big as beef, but it is there. But what we've looked at as well is the sort of opportunity for rural communities and social cohesion and all that as well, because sheep are spread out far more thinly over Scotland than cattle are, really. There's sheep everywhere. And some of the remote island rural areas rely entirely on sheep. You can't put cattle on some of the mountains in Scotland. So it's really, really important for that. So some of the pieces of work that we've done have been to do with that social opportunity for either keeping sheep or increasing the numbers. So what we're really doing is targeting this part of the campaign, less industry to say keep more sheep, because people will respond to the market anyway. It's more targeted at decision makers to say, look, this is why sheep are important to Scotland and to the Scottish economy and to remote rural areas, and to consumers to say, this is an important part of Scotland, and to focus on the provenance and the good that sheep do in the whole of the sort of social fabric of Scotland. So it's the same sort of thing, but it's got slightly different focuses.
Yeah, I think the frustration out there, a lot of it is, the processing capacity in Scotland for sheep. We're in a great position. We've got a great climate for producing sheep meat. We produce the best sheep meat in the world. We know we're doing the job, and what percentage of that are we actually processing within Scotland? It's pretty poor on the whole, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are several processors who do process sheep in Scotland, and I think, as far as I can gather, there is capacity to do more, but it is down to their business structures. As you know, most of them are not just Scottish; they're based across the UK and Ireland, and it's down to their decisions what makes most economic sense for them to do. There is one processor that does all its lamb processing for the whole of the UK in its abattoir in Scotland. So it's about us trying to show policymakers why that would be good, giving them the figures and the facts behind that, so that they can then make decisions so that these companies want to come to Scotland to do their work, So it's about the business environment that they're in, and that comes down to things like food processing grants, planning, just sort of business conditions, and trying to make Scotland as favourable as possible within that UK and Ireland context, so that processors are persuaded and encouraged to do more processing of sheep up here.
Yeah, you certainly, if you look, I have a lot of dairy clients in a live in a dairy area, and when you look at the difficult place the dairy industry is in at the moment, a lot of, well, most of that's driven by the main issues, global economics and oversupply. But the acute issue for a lot of these businesses is actually to do with contracts and processors down south, decisions being made in boardrooms abroad. And, personally, I think that Scotch lamb stories, it's going so well at the moment, but we need to have control, and the power of the industry needs to remain in this country.
Yeah, and I mean, part of why we are so focused on all three species, but Scotch lamb being born, reared, and slaughtered in Scotland, you can't put the brand on it unless it's been slaughtered in Scotland. And part of the reason why we're so strong on that is to try and keep that focus on keeping the processing, in our country. So if there are retailers who are demanding Scotch lamb as opposed to just Scottish lamb or British lamb, if they want Scotch lamb with the brand on, which some of them are now committing to, then they have to have that lamb processed in Scotland. So they then say to the processors they work with, well, we want lamb that's been slaughtered in Scotland. So the whole thing is driven through that way, and that's one reason why we're so strong on that whole born, reared, and slaughtered piece. And I know there are processors out there who maybe don't process their lamb in Scotland, but they're having to contract other processors to do some for them so that they can use that Scotch lamb badge. And that's really, really important that we keep that there. And that's obviously what QMS is here for, is to try and promote those brands so that the consumers understand what they mean. So they're then demanding them from the retailers. So the retailers are then saying to the processors, this is how we want you to do it. So, it's all about having conversations with people so that they understand what it all means and why it's important.
Yep. Now, just on the consumer bit, you've obviously been in this job a while, and it's obviously not all about the farmer. Ultimately it's the consumer that drives everything. I think there's been a good job of work done in terms of educating the public and young people, but is there anything particularly you think that they don't get yet? Is there anything that we need to really focus more on, or anything that really frustrates you about consumers?
We're all consumers, aren't we? So, I mean, I frustrate myself sometimes. It's not there. I don't like the term educate, because I always think we all need to understand where things come from, but we don't necessarily need to know all about it. So I always as farmers, we're always very keen on saying people should know how this works. Why don't people know what silage is? Why don't they understand the production cycle? And actually, they don't need to. I maybe go and buy a sofa. I don't need to know how that sofa was built, and I don't need to be educated in that. I just need to know the basics of it. So I think we need to make sure that people understand the high level stuff. If they want to know more, there's loads of people out there to explain it, but it's the high level stuff about why it's important to buy Scottish, why Scottish livestock are good for the environment, the economy, the climate, nature, all those sort of things. How much knowledge and experience farmers have, and all that sort of traditional farming that's happened in Scotland. People love all that sort of stuff, and that's the sort of stuff that we're trying to get across to them. So when you know campaign, the one we've been running for 3 years, is really about saying these are real farmers. This is how they raise their livestock. They care about the welfare. They care about the environment. It's not about which I think we sometimes fall into the trap of, because we're all so invested in farming, explaining about how if you cut grass at 6 weeks you get good quality silage, and do you know what I mean? I think we need to back off and do the high level stuff as much as possible. And I do get frustrated as well that consumers do tend to conflate what happens here with other places, and that's again another thing that we need to talk about. You'll see people talking about practices and they don't happen here, and again, that's something that we really need to get across, that that's exactly why you want to buy Scottish, because these things don't happen here. If you buy Scottish lamb, Scottish beef, or prime Scottish pork, you can be guaranteed that those things aren't happening in your food. So I think for me, it's about trying to keep it that high level way. But I also get frustrated at farmers because we often don't try to understand consumers very much either. You know, we're often not very good at that. We tell people things, and actually what we should be doing is listening to them.
Yeah. So, pork. We mentioned the three species. We probably, Kirsten and I, will be guilty of talking to the beef and sheep sector because that's the one that we're immersed in. But obviously, the pork sector is hugely important and equally hugely under pressure at the moment. So, assuming you've had your breakfast, done your announcement at the Highland Show, you've probably done the easy bit first, because you'll then have 4 days of talking to farmers, which I always thoroughly enjoy, but it's a full-on day. What are you expecting to hear, and what messages have we got for the pig sector at the moment? Is there room for optimism, or where are we at?
The pig sector is in a really difficult place at the minute, and as you said before, it's global issues that are the problem there. You know, we've got some of the best pig farmers in the world. We've got fantastic units. We've got fantastic pigs and sows out there. But pork, almost more than beef and lamb, is really subject to global pressures in the economy. And the big problem at the minute for pig farms in Scotland, as far as I can gather, is because there was an African swine fever outbreak in Spain. There's a lot of very cheap European pork out there, and it's getting dumped. It's getting dumped all over Europe, but a lot of it's getting dumped into the UK, which is pushing the price down. And pig farmers are now producing pigs below the cost of production, which is completely unsustainable. And actually, looking back in my 2018 to now figures, beef and lamb farm gate prices have gone up, albeit inputs have gone up as well. I totally get that. The pork figures have barely changed. So I think in 2018 it was 145, and from what I can see just now, we're not looking very much above that at all. So it's really, really worrying. I know when I spoke to someone from NFUS the other day, they were saying that they've got evidence to show that sow numbers are down 15% just recently, which is not good. And again, you get to that critical mass. We've only got one pork abattoir in Scotland. So if the critical mass drops below a certain level, you end up with abattoirs not being able to cover their overheads and moving into something else, or going out of business altogether. Not that there's any sign that that's going to happen, but it's just a risk if numbers do keep falling. So it is really difficult to know what to do. Pork has got such opportunities as a meat. It's more nutritionally dense than something like chicken, but is much at the same price as chicken. So I suppose from our point of view at QMS, what we are trying to do is focus on helping people understand how to cook with pork, because a lot of people don't understand, a lot of people have lost that ability, or they've maybe never had it in the first place. So it's about recipes, it's about value for money, it's about directing them to local butchers and retailers who are selling prime Scottish pork, and just trying to encourage them to use it. That's the bit that we can do in this whole jigsaw. But like I say, it's global. It's global issues that are driving this. And I suppose I'm not a pig farmer myself, but I suppose like sheep, you can rebuild slightly quicker in the pork sector if things do turn round than you can in the cattle sector, because of the production cycle so much quicker.
Yeah, I just wonder if we went back, we don't have a time machine, but if we went back to COVID, and if we told a beef farmer that was getting $3.30 a kilo that actually within the next 5 years you're going to be getting, well, at the moment obviously somewhere about £6, but up to £7 a kilo in that period, what would they have done? They would have gone to town, put numbers up. The thing's been good, but what would the pig farmer have done if during COVID you said that actually after COVID, 5 years down the line, you're going to be getting the same price?
Well, exactly. And a lot of them went out of business during that time. There was a huge contraction of the pig sector at that point in time, and then it was stabilised and things were going really well for a bit, and now it's dropped back again. I mean, I think pigs have always been, from what I can gather, have always been a bit more volatile. There has been a bit more boom and bust in pigs than in the other species, but no, it is worrying, and we're doing we're doing as much as we can. And like I say, the meeting our potential pig figures are going to come out later in the year, which hopefully will help to show again decision makers, politicians, how important the pig sector in Scotland is, and we're working at that at pace.
Wait a second, sorry. Sorry. One question I've got, and I've had it for a wee while, and I'm going to ask it because you're here. There's obviously more than QMS across the world. There's bodies like QMS in every country or in most countries. Very important they're there. Do they all say that they produce the best beef, lamb, or pork in the world? Or do you think we genuinely do?
Of course they all say that, because that's what you say. But when you benchmark what we do across other countries, particularly the assurance standards, we are up there with the top in the world. So everybody does things slightly differently, don't they? But we've got the ideal climate for producing beef and lamb here sustainably. We've got the sort of landscape out there that we can grow grass but not much else, so it's the ideal place to produce it. And for centuries, Scotch beef in particular has been known globally, worldwide, that it's maybe not centuries, that's maybe an exaggeration, decades, let's say decades. We've been known worldwide. I mean, I went to Japan in 2019. I was really lucky to go on a trade mission, and there hadn't been any British beef in Japan for 25 years after BSE, and the Japanese importers were saying, we want Scotch beef. It's a world-renowned name. So yeah, everybody's going to say they produce the best, but we produce the best.
Excellent. So we can hand on heart, we can see it. So Highland Show, what are you looking forward to? So obviously there's the pressure bits, the speaking bits, and the maybe the hairdryer from some farmers here and there, but is there any real highlights for you in the stand this year, or things you're really looking forward to?
The best thing for me about the Highland Show is just a chance to speak to as many people as possible. I mean, how many conversations do you have? How many unfinished sentences do you have because someone else speaks to you as you're halfway through a sentence to someone else? For me, the best thing about the show is just taking that temperature of everything that's going on. So there always tends to be a theme that comes through, the thing that more people are speaking about than anything else. And that's really, really important, because then, you get that temperature check of how the sector's feeling, and you can look if there are challenges that have been missed that we're not really seeing when we're working away in our day-to-day. You can really take that on board. I think it was a couple of years ago, the big one was really, everybody seemed to be talking about young people and the next generation and the difficulties in succession. And I think that really sort of pushed a focus onto that a little bit. Everybody obviously got that feeling, and it pushed a focus onto it. And so there was a lot of work done on it over the next sort of wee while. So that's the bit that I like the best, just speaking to people and hearing what's going on, and the busyness and the bustle, and the churros on the Sunday afternoon. There's a churro stand outside the sponsors tent, and I love red meat, and I eat lots of red meat over the show, but the churros with the chocolate sauce are my go-to on the Sunday afternoon as a treat to say well done for getting through another 4 days.
Yeah, the integral part of a balanced diet is plenty of red meat. Absolutely. And churros. Good. And then the horrible feeling on the Monday when you feel like you've been hit by a bus. But
yes, exactly. And you don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah. Kate, that's been brilliant. We've touched on a lot there. I know there's been a lot of questions come in for you specifically. Hopefully we've managed to cover a lot of them. And certainly if there's any more, we're certainly keen to take any more, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. But certainly we'll look forward to catching up at the Highland Show.
Brilliant. See you then. That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate.
So today I'm joined with Abby Tong. So hi Abby, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm pleasure to be here.
Can I just get a bit of background about you, Abby? So what your role is within QMS and how you fit in with the team?
Yes, of course. Well, I actually have joined the QMS about 4 years already. So my first role at QMS, actually not my current role, is actually marketing intelligence project officer. I was mainly work with Ian, our marketing intelligence manager. I believe you have met him already. So my first role is all about data and how to improve the various impacts of the reports we prepare. For example, our annual biggest report is the Scottish red meat industry profile. You probably know it around it already. We are working on it at the moment. I think it's the fact that its role itself is like more about the data and about improve rural impacts attract me a lot within this role because my background I have a master degree in finance. I have a bachelor degree in economics, and to just get into data and getting out all these insights and making a positive impact on the businesses. So all I'm interested in. So let's fits for my kind of a career very well. And after 1 year time in the original role, I move into my current role, which is a category specialist, or now I change the title into insight specialist. It's actually the same. I think this it so previously my previous role is more about like farm gate side, it's a supply side, and my current role is more about demand side, focusing on this consumer and the retail insights. I think it's my background is these two different roles and just give me very complete like knowledge into this red meat whole supply chain, and so equip me with a very good kind of knowledge to give useful and impactful insights whenever it's needed. So yeah, I think that's me and working at the QMS.
Brilliant. Well, a lot of your retail and your insights we'll bring into our conversation today, but I just wonder, with a background on finance and economics, what brought you into agriculture?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's a very interesting kind of a background for myself, and because I'm actually coming from originally coming from China. Even though I have been living in Europe for many years, the majority of the time living in Europe, but still, it's my hometown. It's kind of like we have a lot of like cattle and sheep as well. Our cuisines back in my hometown, we just eat a lot of red meat, and so the red meat itself is attract me quite a lot. And coming to Scotland, I have tried out so many good quality red meat, and it reminds me of my hometown. I really love this industry, even though I'm not coming from the farming background, but I love red meat.
Can I ask you, who has the best red meat, China or Scotland?
Well, it's actually the same and the same weight in my heart, and they all got their own places in my heart. I love them all, and even so, my parents or like our friends coming from China is coming to visit us and try out meat here, and they still feel, oh, it's good quality, it's like really good quality. And I could say even its tenderness is so much better in Scotland compared to what we have in my hometown. So it's probably it's slightly much better in Scotland.
And if we think then to the sheep sector, so today we're focusing on sheep, and we are seeing complete and utter record prices at the moment. And it's very interesting when other sectors, pigs and cattle, the prices are on the decline. Why are sheep performing so well?
Well, as probably I'm thinking about the demand side really, and if we're so looking at the retail side, retail kind of sales, and lamb have been an outperformer in Scotland since last year. And so, for example, I'll just give you several examples. For example, in the most recent 12 weeks period, which is including the Easter holiday celebration. And we have seen like a surge demand for lamb leg roasting, and the lamb leg roasting, its volume has been increased by 19% compared to last year. So you could see a great need, like is coming from in Scotland. And if you look at it's another cut is very interesting. It's lamb steak. For the lamb steak, for the most recent 52 weeks period, we could tell that the volume increased by 52% compared to last year. Well, that is really a significant growth in demand we could see. And also, if you compare with Scotland, with GB, and Scotland for the past 52 weeks, Scotland's volume increased for lamb sector. Its retail sales increased by 8%. But if you compare with GB as a whole, GB has seen a decline of 5%. So you could totally see there is a surging demand for lamb cuts, lamb products in retail at the moment. And looking ahead, so like summertime, I'm probably will still see the lamb going to flying simply because for the summertime it's a barbecue season, and some of lamb kind of cuts like lamb steak and lamb chops, and it is very popular when you go out for the barbecue occasion. So that probably still drives the need for lamb products. So from the demand side, I would say that is a strong demand and driving up the prices. Yeah.
It's very interesting that we're seeing both volume and price increasing with the demand is still going, because quite often when the price goes up, the volume doesn't increase, does it? Sales might, because it's worth more per kilo.
Yeah.
But why is that? Why is more people turning to lamb?
Well, I think some of the reason probably we could go back to beef. We could talk about the beef sector. For example, the lamb steak I have just mentioned. Lamb steak is volume increased by 52%, and still it's a very like premium cut. Its price is like say 18 pounds per kilo. But if you compare to beef steak, and beef steak currently probably it's I think it's, if I remember right, it's around 24 pounds per kilo. That's quite like a kind of price premium if you compare the beef steak to lamb steak. So I'm thinking probably some of the volume has been switching from beef steak to lamb steaks. There's still the same premium kind of steak for special occasions when people want to dine at home, but beef steak is kind of it's just too expensive for some of the families, so they have to trade down to lamb steak. I think some of the reason could be attributed to that.
And with like that's such a big increase, your 50% increase in lamb steaks. Are you seeing, when you look at the retail kind of insights, are you seeing that people are diversifying away from the typical cuts more so than just with steaks? So are people looking more towards, I don't know, marinades or easy convenient type meats? Or what cuts are people buying?
Well, it's a very good question actually, and from what we see, and actually beef is still kind of a staple for Scottish households, and its volume is still 63% of the volume goes to beef consumption in Scotland. So you see, the beef is still very very important. I think the top kind of a cart for beef sector is the beef mince, and people still consume beef mince, even though its price has been rising so fast. But we still see some quite emerging kind of a trend coming up, especially for the summertime, for the barbecue occasions. For example, the kebabs. I have been into store and visiting store recently, and there's so many different types of NPD and new products around about the kebab. So I think it's according to our data from World Panel Barometer, actually last year. So the kebabs, its volume has been increased by, I don't know, 21% volume. So compare year to year. So that's a great increase. If you look at, and I think it's another card is worth to keep a close eye on during the summertime, probably it's ribs. The packs have been sold, and last year increased by 11% year on year. So that is another card is quite popular during the summer occasions. And if you're talking about, as you mentioned about convenience, of course, that we have seen the strong demand from consumer side. Convenience is very important to them. So we have seen some of the like a premium kind of private label product like convenience pack ready meals, and their sales is flying at the moment. So this is a lot of like cards and products that we could keep a close eye on, and convenience and health, and they are both very it's a driving demand. But at the same time, I just want to say that still price and kind of provide a good value for the consumers is very key to drive more footfalls. Yeah.
It was very interesting. Robert spoke to Kate earlier, and Kate spoke about how maybe as farmers we're not very good at understanding our customer.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to our listeners about understanding our customer?
Well, I think that's a very very good question actually. Because as a consumer, so from my job roles, my role is to improve the visual impact and try to deliver more insights to our stakeholders, especially I think for the farmers. So actually, I've been producing some of the contents online. Either it's about like seasonal events, how like the retail side, how it's been performed for each card for each sector. And also there's like retail market updates and published on monthly basis on QMS website. So I think it's gradually you pick up all this information. And if let's, for example, our stakeholders, farmers don't understand this content, welcome to drop me email, whatever. I'm happy to explain all these insights to them.
And it is interesting because consumer demands are definitely changing. We've obviously got a bit of a cost of living issue just now, as well as protein is really in vogue. There's people having high protein diets and always eating the same, if chicken's cheap, you don't want to eat chicken 7 days a week. So having that ability to diversify, when you're saying there's the rise of steaks and there's a lot of kebabs, I guess it's looking at that diversification that the shops or the butchers are offering different ways to eat the meats, so that it feels that every day is different, and it keeps food exciting as well.
Yeah, definitely. So since you mentioned this cost like living kind of a crisis, and I just want to mention a very key point. I think it's a very important piece of insight to our listeners or either stakeholders. It's like our shoppers now, they're very cost conscious and they're spending less on these groceries. So actually, if you combine what's happening in the beginning of this year, like in what's happening in the Middle East, and it's already have an impact on oil prices, we can all see it and feel it. And that kind of effect will gradually pass through to the whole supply chain of even to the retailer end and the consumer end. So, and also mentioning about like our consumer, 64% of our consumers, according to our panel barometer, and 64% of them feeling just managing or just struggling with their finance. If you compare to the data in 2020, that number is 55%. So there's a nearly 10% increase. And also we have been following their product like repertoire and product mix. Basically that means there's a reduced level of them. That meaning people are buying less products and put less products in their basket and they're spending less. And so this kind of a trend, I think it's just telling you that how people react to this price inflation. And in the retail store, we could obviously see there's more people participating in the price promotion. And of course, and there's some more like sales for private label. Private label is cheaper than the branded ones. And also we have seen some trade down from the expensive cuts and proteins to cheaper cuts. For example, from beef to probably to pork and poultry. And so all these trends, I think, but still, I would say, even though we have seen like people have very tight budget, but still there's opportunities for red meat sector as well. For example, we could focus on more affordable kind of protein. For example, we have seen this pork mince. Its volume has been growing very positively, and of course, another one is I have probably mentioned previously. It's premium kind of private label product, ready meals, and or even this premium private label like primary cards, because consumers now, because of the cost of living crisis, they have a fewer trips out of home, go to restaurants, and all of these needs occasions have been converted into the retail side. They want to replicate this restaurant kind of style meal at home. So there's a more like opportunities for like in stores. Yeah.
So we're obviously recording this podcast that's going to be put out the first day of the Highland Show.
Yeah.
Will you be at the Highland Show, Abby, for people that want to come and speak to you?
Definitely, I will be there. You will see my face and around in different tents. Probably, sometimes we will have shifts to Lidl's tents. So, but anyways, you will see me quite often at the Royal Highland Show. Yeah.
And what do you look forward to most about the Highland Show?
Well, for me, every year probably it's just learn more about like different animal breeds. You know, I coming from not from a farming background. It's every time when I go to the different different sheds and look at the different animal breeds, either it's blackface, Texel. It's always quite interesting to know the animals. So that's the exciting part for me, I think.
Brilliant. And while you're there, do you try and test some of the different foods that are on offer at the show?
Well, to be honest, well, we are at Royal Highland Show, and we don't have much time to like spending to try out different foods at the Royal Highland Show because we have very busy with different shifts. But if you want me to recommend, I probably recommend our cookery demo. And so every time I could try out the different foods, the different recipes involving red meat, and it's quite easy to pick up some new recipes and even pick up some new cooking skills. So so I would recommend that.
And is that a perk for the QMS staff? Do you get to taste the wares of the chefs after they've cooked up?
Yes. Yeah, if there's some left over, we are allowed to try some.
Brilliant. Well, it's been great speaking to you today, Abby, and enjoy the Highland Show.
Thank you, Kirsten. You too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the QMS podcast. We hope you find the discussion informative and useful.
If you've got a question that you'd like us to ask in a future episode, please send it to us by commenting on the social media channels or by using the anonymous submission link in the episode description.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and if you enjoyed this conversation, please do share it with others across the Scottish red meat industry. Thanks for listening.